Geeks, geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, comic fans the world over, you've come to the right place for comic book history, insight, insider information, professional advice, all at popular prices. This is the Ask Chuck Dixon channel where you get to ask me, Chuck Dixon, what I do for a living, about what I do for a living, and what I do for a living is I write comic books. As crazy as that sounds. Once again, it came from the Twitterverse. Now that Elon Musk has freed Twitter from the evil, venomous, nasty communist hall monitors, I'm once again active on Twitter and recently asked the tweeters for some questions. And this show is going to be basically made up of stuff I pulled off of that site. Jonik, his pronouns are Schlee, Schlim, and Schler. Welcome to Twitter. Would you ever come back to write some Punisher like you have over the years for the Batman characters? I still think of Punisher stories, even though I'm not paid to do so. I have an affinity for Frank Castle that I can't quite explain. I think it's because he's every negative male stereotype rolled into one, what we've come to know as toxic masculinity. And I love it. He's a slob hero. He's very direct. He's funny, even though he doesn't mean to be. I've always dug the character. Strangely, I think Marvel's a weird home for him. And I think Marvel feels the same way. He's quite the outsider in every way, both in a meta way and literally within the books. But yeah, I would come back, but unfortunately, I am prohibited. Axel Alonso, who was editor-in-chief, I believe, of Marvel Comics, very often publicly said that Chuck Dixon will never write another Punisher story as long as I'm here. And, he's not there anymore, but apparently the rule sticks. As Tom Brevoort also publicly stated, Chuck's not blacklisted. He just can't write for Marvel anymore. Give that man a dictionary. According to Mike, what is the best artist-writer dynamic in your opinion when collaborating? What is easier, to have the artist redraw or the writer rewrite a scene? It's always easier to rewrite. I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've asked for a redraw on something. Now, as a writer, I'm sure editors ask for redraws all the time. I don't know. It's not something I hear artists complain a lot about. And today, with everything digitized, there's a lot of things can be done with a comic book page to reorder it or rework it without ever redrawing anything. So, it obviously easier for me to, cut and paste and rewrite something rather than have the artist go through the labor of a redraw. Greg Waller, do you see the pendulum swinging back in the direction of less wokeism and leftist agenda in comics or movies, TV, etc. in general, or is it here to stay, or does it get even worse? I guess that's technically a three-part question. I see you're going for a triple spin, but no, these are three questions on the same subject. So better luck next time. I don't see the woke going away. I really thought with Discovery Channel taking over Warner's and cleaning house a bit, and Paramount making it clear that they are not interested in pandering to any particular political ideology, and a number of other outlets making changes and firing people who were clearly untalented and only got their positions because their minds were right in the viewpoint of the left-wing intelligentsia. Despite all that, I still see more and more woke material appearing. Maybe woke is a demographic now, and I can't think that there are that many people that are looking for this kind of entertainment. where you sort of nod along rather than actually enjoying yourself. You're just sort of in agreement with what's being presented. Like, I don't find this particularly funny or engaging or suspenseful, but I'm in sync with the creators. To me, that's not entertainment. Certainly not escapist entertainment. But yeah, I don't see it going away. And then, of course, you've got a large segment of the population that simply isn't aware that they're being propagandized to, even when it's extremely obvious that it's pure propaganda. And Disney in particular seems to have doubled and tripled down on woke material about, sexual identity and this skewed view of America, America seen through the lens of, race alone, things like that. And they've continued to lose, just buckets of money. I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars because they adhere to this schedule. And I really thought, see, at Warner's, they pulled a lot of the woke material or canceled projects that were woke because they knew they were money losers at the beginning. But I mean, Disney did a major release of Strange World, which contained a lot of really, there's no other way to put it, but like grooming aspects for young children. And they released it, marketed it, and everything else. It's I think their biggest animated feature failure ever. I mean, it lost hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office. No one went to see it. I think there was an active campaign not to go see this movie, word of mouth that, and Disney promoted it as woke. So I don't know at what point does Disney bring themselves to their knees to a point where they're open to a hostile takeover by another company. I mean, when you're hemorrhaging this much cash, your shareholders have to be looking for a way out, right? So maybe what has to happen at Disney is for them to get bought by somebody with some common sense, who wants to once again appeal to a general mass audience. Because let's face it, Disney's not making art films; they're making films for a mainstream population. They're making movies that everybody should want to go see, not just people who vote for the same people they vote for. I mean, and who gives a damn about any of that in the end? I mean, I don't want to watch movies that I agree with the agenda of, movies that are devoid of any real entertainment value, simply because, I agree with that guy. I appreciate his stand on corporate taxes, so I'm going to watch this movie he made, even though I'm bored stiff. No, I don't. Obviously, most of the public has rejected this, whether consciously or subconsciously. Now, this could all be misinterpreted that I'm just an old guy and I don't like change, and I don't like to see things happening that are different than what I expected. But nothing could be further from the truth, and this is true for you, and it's true for me. We've always had diversity in entertainment, or recent years, recent decades, we've had diversity in entertainment that reflects societal change, but more importantly, just reflects who lives here in the United States, or what part of the population would be in the story. Okay, so we've accepted diversity without being told it was diversity, without being told that we're better people because we've accepted it. We've just been presented with entertainment that didn't have a message, didn't have an ideology, and just happened to want to appeal to a wider audience, want to appeal to everybody. So it includes everybody in its entertainment, and it's not scolding or trying to virtue signaling or whatever. It just is. I mean, we like the character of Storm because she's a badass. When I think of Storm, and I'm not a big X-Men fan, but I was a fan when Storm was introduced. I was reading the title. Everybody was reading X-Men at that point. It was the peak of its popularity, and everybody who was reading comics was reading X-Men. And They introduced Storm, and Storm eventually became leader of the X-Men. And they didn't push it in our face. She's the first black woman to be leader of it. They didn't think of it. We didn't think of it. It didn't matter. Storm organically within the story rose to be the leader of the X-Men because she was a really, really cool character and with an interesting background, three-dimensionally realized and everything else. And everybody liked Storm. It didn't matter what color she was. And that's what creators today seem to forget. They're fighting. They think they're fighting against racism by promoting stereotypes. It's really rather sick when you think about it. And there are these, token, vapid cardboard cutout, racial stereotypes or archetypes, and it's tedious, it's boring, and it's not entertaining. Thoughts like this bring me back to Barney Miller. Barney Miller was a series that ran for 5 or 6 years, maybe more, on ABC television. It was extraordinarily popular, both in broadcast and in syndication. And it had a diverse cast, and not just the core cast, but it had a diverse cast of characters. It was about a police precinct. The action, for the most part, took place in 2 rooms, the squad room and Barney's office. And each week, characters would come to the precinct for help or be arrested or whatever. And you had this, a truly diverse cast of characters. And the thing about Barney Miller is they would deal with the issues of the day, but they would deal with them in a non-political way. The cast of characters would disagree on subjects. They would have arguments and discussions with the people that they brought in. And these things were often frank, by today's standards, highly politically incorrect. This show would be highly controversial if it was made today. Back then, it was a standard fare. Americans talked about the issues, and they talked about the issues in an honest and open way that some people say you're not allowed to talk this way anymore. But the thing about Barney Miller is that at the bottom of it all, no matter what hot topic was involved in the show, and it wasn't always about hot topics, but sometimes it was. It was dealing, because it was a New York City precinct, it was dealing with subjects that were coming up in the news. It was remaining topical simply to provide grist for stories and character development, things like that. It was one of the first shows that had a regular gay character, or several gay characters. And just for an example, there were a lot of gay jokes, but then the subject was also dealt with honestly, sometimes even touchingly. And at the bottom of it all, no matter what they were talking about, if it was nuclear proliferation or pollution or the poisoning of our food supply, at the bottom line, there was a humanity to it. When they presented characters who we would all universally find unappealing because they held a very unpopular societal viewpoint, the show made it a point to humanize that character, so you at least understood where they were coming from. Even if you didn't agree with their viewpoint, you would go, okay, they do have a reason to believe what they believe. And this is something missing from entertainment. If you wanted to present, if your sole purpose was to present, a diverse cast dealing with the issues of the day, this is how you do it. Because Barney Miller never told you what to think on any subject. They left it up to you. You could agree or disagree with whoever you wanted to on the show. And the writing was deft, often emotional, but in the end, it accomplished the job it was meant to accomplish. It was 30 minutes of entertainment that was often very funny and smart. And I think if you want to do this kind of entertainment, this is the model. And of course, the reason why it was diverse was not for the sake of diversity, but because it was accurately portraying the environment. The southern half of the island of Manhattan. It was portraying that environment in accurately. Okay, if the cast was all white, it wouldn't make any sense. The audience wouldn't respond to it. They wouldn't see that it was honest or real. And that's what you got to think about. Is your show being honest? And so much of this woke entertainment is far from honest. It has a more sinister, tone to it, unintentionally. When you realize you're being preached to, you realize that you're being hectored and scolded. It's not fun. It's not entertaining. This is not what it's about. It's not why I got into this business. I don't want to change anybody's mind. I just want you to, forget about that crap for a little while you're reading my stuff. Double Vision Comics. In all honesty, what condition do you think the Western comic industry would be in now if it never went woke? Related question. I don't think it would be all that different. I don't, because you got to remember that a lot of the no talents in charge were in charge before the wokeism. They just sort of latched onto wokeism, and they just brought on new people to aid and abet. A lot of this stuff is job security. You've got to go along. You've got to lockstep. You've got to march along with the rest. You've got to raise your fist in anger with everybody else, even if you don't feel angry, because you don't want to be. You want to conform, and that's what this is about. It's about conforming. It's about bending the knee. And, in order to keep their jobs, a lot of the people in charge, of particularly the big two, conformed. Because you can't be speaking out. You'll lose your job. And so I think wokeism just filled the void of indifference that most of the editors and administrative people at the comic book companies were feeling. They didn't care about the product anymore. And so someone who did care, not about the product, but about their message, came to fill in. So I don't think comics would be, wokeism isn't killing comics. It's a symptom. Many things killed American comics. Poor business decisions, as I said, indifference, a failure to produce quality material, a chasing away of top creators. Marvel and DC created their own competition by chasing away top talent who we're not going to go gentle into that good night. You got top talent, people at the peak of their powers are going to keep doing comics, and they're going to do them for whoever will pay them to do them, or as we've seen in recent years, they'll find a way to finance themselves. And that's who DC's and Marvel's competition is. It's a death of 1,000 cuts. All of these top entertainers, all of these top talent writers and pencilers and inkers and colorists that they've let go are stealing their audience. And not really stealing it, because they abandoned their audience. And particularly wokeism. Wokeism is really the final straw, because wokeism demanded that the readership change. So you either agreed with their agenda, you agreed with what they were pushing, or you didn't. And if you didn't agree, then go away. We don't want you to read our comic books. And you've seen this over and over again from publishers and editors and talent to say, if you voted for this guy, I don't want you reading my comic. That's insane. I don't care who you voted for. If you like my comics, God bless you. You like my comics. You're responding to something I did. Wokeism is a symptom. It's not the cause. Okay. Giuseppe Morgante, what do you think of the current iteration of Shazam? Should they not just use the Captain Marvel name for the character, considering its history, and call the book Shazam for trademark purposes? The way they're using it now is clumsy. Both movies and comics, I don't know. The movie in particular, I thought the first movie was fun. It was a fun movie for kids. It held a little bit of the charm of the original Captain Marvel comics, but the whimsy was missing. To be replaced by like an urban snark. A jokey joke, fill in the joke here. And then they committed the cardinal sin of diluting the cast. So now everybody's Captain Marvel. So who cares? I can see where it's kind of wish fulfillment fantasy that all these kids get to have superpowers and all the rest of it. But it's a bit much to introduce like a whole, Captain Marvel family all in one shot. But again, I mean, maybe the original Captain Marvel is lost to time because we don't really deal in whimsy that much anymore. And it's a lot of what Captain Marvel was about. They were comic books written for children that didn't pander to children. If you read the old Captain Marvel comics, they're fun. They're fun, engaging reads. They're very, very different from what DC was doing with Superman at the time. They don't take themselves terribly seriously, although there are stakes in the story. There's risk, there's suspense, there's a lot of humor, and it's all done once over lightly. But it's all done in a very professional manner by grown men who took the job of entertaining children seriously. And now, why DC didn't fight harder to maintain the Captain Marvel trademark, why they let it slip away, which is really all it is. I mean, all they had to do was publish a Captain Marvel comic every now and then over the years, but they didn't. And so Marvel was able to snake in and take the Captain Marvel name for themselves, which is a shame. But, it's DC. Some of DC's practices were rather vile at the time, even driving Fawcett Comics out of business. By taking away the Captain Marvel character, by suing them endlessly, keeping them in court, saying that Captain Marvel was stolen from Superman, which I think is a spurious claim. But they just beat them down because they didn't want the competition, and Captain Marvel was competition for Superman. I guess DC saw every issue of Wiz Comics and Captain Marvel comics that sold was an issue of Superman that didn't. And so they kept after them hammer and tongue until Fawcett just said, okay, all right, forget it. We'll get out of the comic book business. And but Fawcett got its revenge. They returned to the comic book business with a series of Dennis the Menace comics, which consistently outsold everything in the DC line for years and years and years. But the current iteration, it's okay. I'm not that thrilled with it. The comics I don't like because they take the character way too seriously. And even in the 70s iteration, they failed to understand what made Captain Marvel tick, what the core of the charm of the character was. So there you go. It's kind of sad. Bounding in the comics. What would your DCU slate look like? This is one of those, if I ruled the world, what would I do at DC? If I had to say, I would go for my more diverse comics, sort of ease people in. I would do other genres. A line of police comics based in the Batman universe, maybe eventually not based in the Batman universe, just to try to interest readers who maybe don't like superheroes all that much. I bring back Vertigo. Vertigo was, basically bludgeoned to death when Dan DiDio was in charge because he thought that Vertigo was a parasite. He thought DC Comics was carrying Vertigo, even though for years Vertigo was the only one that had any TV and movie deals that were in the works, while DC lay fallow. And Vertigo, even though it's a line I didn't enjoy, I appreciated it because it was reaching out to a different audience, and it was successful, and I celebrated its success, even though it wasn't for me. But every comic can't be for you, which is something that Dan DiDio didn't seem to understand. This reached out to a different readership, a slightly older readership than superhero comics, a slightly more cynical, more urban readership, and did so successfully for many, many years. And I would bring back Vertigo, and I would task it with the same job. Get us new readers. Get us readers outside of the ones already reading our product. I would bring back the war titles simply to explore another genre. Military fiction, military adventure stuff is really hot now. People want to read this stuff. I would have a title uh, about, the current war on terror. I would have a comic about the fighting in Afghanistan. I'd have a World War II comic. Why not? I'd have a maybe a magazine-sized uh, military history adventure comic. You know, there's certainly the talent to do it and explore a new audience. I mean, do it as a one shot. I would do it as a one shot to see how it sold on the newsstand, in the bookstores, and then if it worked out, continue. And here's an easy one that they think of every once in a while, and then it all falls apart. Have a Justice League that actually features the main characters we want to see. The core iconic DC characters. Every time DC does this, it's a huge hit. And then over time, the creators decide, well, I don't want to write about Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Batman, Flash, and Aquaman anymore. I want to introduce some, backbencher character I liked as a kid, or I want to create a new character. And as soon as they start diluting and diverting from the core 6 characters, the pillars of DC Comics, as soon as they begin getting away from them, the sales fall every single time. And they never seem to understand why. Why isn't Justice League selling like it used to? It's because dummy, everybody wants to see the core characters together. You feel like there's some value there. Like I'm getting some more for my money because I'm getting all of these classic characters together in one story. And of course, it's a challenge to write stories for those 6 characters, which is why they don't do it. Oh, also, I do something about formatting. I look at what manga does. Look at Shonen Jump, and the many other telephone book Japanese comics. I would do this. I would put out a big fat anthology of new material and old material, mix color and black and white to save money. Keep it under $10. Get it on the newsstand. Get it in the bookstores. Hell, get it at the book fairs at schools. And do it as a quarterly. Okay? So you do one, and you're committed to a second one. If it's not making any money, you didn't spend that much money. But I think something like this on the newsstand would fly. I mean, you see these crappy, you go to the supermarket and you see these crappy, History of Marvel comic magazine specials. And they're sitting there and they're like, everything you already know about Marvel, all between 2 covers for, $15. Wouldn't this sell better sitting next to that? I mean, you actually get some comics, you actually get some entertainment, not just a reportage from some Entertainment Weekly writer. And come on, you're a comic book fan, I'm a comic book fan. If you saw something like this on the stands, you'd buy it. I mean, you'd just pick it up and thumb through it. No, you'd buy it because you'd want to see it. And, DC did, an admirable thing by trying to get into Walmart and doing those dollar, whatever they were, comics. I don't know how much they cost. They were 100 pagers at Walmart. And that was great, except, they were generally put someplace no one could see them. I don't know how well they did sales-wise. It was a good effort, but I don't think there was enough value there. I don't think they stood out enough. Something like this, I mean, just in your face. 200 pages of comics, 300 pages of comics. Big-ass comic book. And, this is going to keep a kid busy, for a long car ride. You know what I mean? So this is what I would do. I think formatting, just do something different. Because they're not. They just keep doing the same thing. Let's do a big cross-company crossover that changes the continuity forever. And it's like, man, how many fans do you shed every time you do that? How many fans just go, that's it, I've had it. That's it. That's all the money from me you're going to get because you're doing the same thing in a different way over and over again, often with the same creators over and over and over. Nothing new, nothing different, no appeal to a new reader whatsoever. I mean, these big, massive, post-crisis continuity monsters have no appeal to a casual reader because they don't know what the hell's going on in one panel of what you're trying to do. So yeah, break it out, do something different, just shake it the hell up, and do it in a way that you're not going to lose a lot of money if it fails. But put up some trial balloons, my friends. Just whatever, Psychofear, aka fear. So your your avatar has a alias. How come Query and Echo have never made it big? Do you think it's due to low exposure or simply because DC never liked them? I think mostly Query and Echo, who were Riddler's hench girls, were a creation of mine, and I don't know that anybody else ever used them. As often happened, I would create characters and put them in continuity, and they would appear quite a few times, only in my stories, and we would never ever see them again. So yeah, I think they just. I mean, when I was in DC, you had all these characters, you had these supervillains, and they always had henchmen, and I always thought, well, should we explain more of the relationship of the henchman to the criminal? Why are they there? Make the henchmen, more interesting, more an integral part of the story. I mean, like Bane's henchmen are, an integral part of his story and continue on with him. So when we see Bane, we see Bird, Trog, and Zombie. And I thought, what kind of a gang would Riddler have? I mean, he's a psychotic loser. So basically, he hooks up with these two crazy girls. They're just wild, bad girls, and you got to wonder who's being henched because they often seem in charge. I mean, they'll go along with the Riddler and his crazy plans, but they'll just as often be pissed off at him and make him pay the price for failure, which is failure is a major part of the Riddler's life, at least in my idea of who the Riddler is. So yeah, why don't they use them? They've probably forgotten them by now. So. And they never used them on the animated show, which would have assured them continued fame. Matt Moylan. Question about working at DC and Marvel. As a writer, were you kept in the loop as the art for an issue progressed? Or you just hand in the script and see the art when the book is printed? Well, it was different at each company. At Marvel, for the brief time that I was working Marvel style, I would see all the art because they would send me Xeroxes so I could write the dialogue and place balloons, but that only lasted so often. Today, I'm mostly involved in independent and creator-owned projects, so I'm seeing the art as it goes along. I get emails all the time with attachments, and even after close to 40 years in the business, this is still the biggest thrill to me, seeing the pages. First of all, it's flattering to see my written word turned into such gorgeous images. That's a kick, Plus, I just get to see great artwork. When I was at Marvel and DC, I could request from editors, can I see this work as it goes along? And they would send me Xeroxes, so I could at least see the pages. And sometimes, if it was a job by Russ Heath or Eduardo Barreto, I would ask for full-size Xeroxes, just for my own flat file, so I could see the original artwork over and over and over again, because I dig this stuff. I dig comics. I dig the process. I did that for when I worked with Joe Kubert on Punisher. I said, could I have full-size Xeroxes of all the stuff? And Joe heard about it, and he had them include in a package the thumbnails for an issue. So I had Joe Kubert's original thumbnails that he gave me, which, if you know anything about Joe Kubert, was a highly unusual gesture. I was very, very honored. I was very, very humbled because Joe didn't sell original artwork, let alone give it away. And Joe archived everything that he did for the most part. If he penciled and inked it, it was, it remained in his archives. That's why you rarely see Joe Kubert artwork for sale anywhere. But yeah, I mean, if I request it, I see the art as it goes along. But of course, on creator-owned projects and projects I'm more intimately involved with, I see everything. I see the pages as they are completed. And as I said, huge kick for me. If you want to contact me, questions, yeah, Twitter's cool, Facebook's cool, asking questions under here is cool, but the most reliable way to reach me is through Bruno Bookstore at gmail.com, Bruno Bookstore at gmail.com. I check this email address quite a few times during the day, and sometimes have some back and forth with you there, some private emails back and forth with me, because often I'm asked questions I don't want to answer here for one reason or another. And that's it for me this week. I got nothing to push to you. I already pushed the Bad Times books on you. And I want to thank you all for listening. I want to thank you for watching, subscribing, liking, and all of the rest. And I'll see everybody right